Welcome, everybody. We'll get started here in a few minutes. Give some time for folks to join.
Bienvenidos a todos. Comenzaremos en algunos minutos.
As we're coming in the gray box, you will see instructions for those that would like interpretation.
Así como van entrando, van a ver el mundo en la parte inferior de la pantalla, por si gustan interpretación.
Again, just want to welcome everybody. We'll get started here in a few minutes. Thank you for joining us. We'll give folks a few more minutes to get themselves into the meeting.
De nuevo, bienvenidos a nuestra reunión. Vamos a darle unos minutos para que sigan entrando las personas y comenzamos en algunos minutos.
For those of you that are joining us that would like interpretation, please follow the directions in the gray box and click on the interpretation button at the bottom of your screen.
Si usted gustaría interpretación, por favor haga clic al mundo en la parte inferior de la pantalla y seleccione español para español.
Still have a few people joining us. I'm watching the attendee list. So we'll give it another minute or so for people to join and then we will get started. But thank you everybody for being with us tonight.
Seguimos recibiendo a personas. Vamos a darle unos cuantos minutos para poder empezar. Gracias por estar aquí.
All right, we're going to get started. First off, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Brian Bailey. I'm the principal at Tigard High School, and we are happy to welcome everybody to this event tonight. One last announcement, if you would like interpretation, please follow the gray box and you can click on the interpretation button down at the bottom for one of our 3 language options for this evening.
Gracias por estar aquí con nosotros. Si usted gusta que escuchar la presentación en español, haga clic en el mundo inferior de la pantalla y seleccione Spanish para español.
All right, before we get started, one last thing I'd like to just thank some people behind the scenes this evening that we couldn't do this event without them. We have Thor is our magic man running all of our technology. Every time we do one of these events, I forget to thank him for all of his hard work. And so we want to thank you, Thor. And then also behind the scenes that many of us can't see, we also have Diane, Maddie, and Gigi who are providing interpretation simultaneously. So we will be speaking somewhat slow so that our colleagues can translate that as we go this evening. But with that, Thor, let's go ahead and get started. We can move forward. Our two primary goals tonight, and number one, first and foremost, is we want to provide clarity about the options coming back into hybrid so that families can make an educated decision that's best for them. We think that it's very important for students and parents to understand exactly what they are signing up for if they choose the hybrid option. I'll be upfront and honest. If you're anticipating school as you know it, school as you remember it, or what it was prior to the pandemic, things are going to look different because we need to take safety, and our safety precautions have to be our primary objective. And we'll get into a little bit more about that this evening. And then we also want to share timelines for making the selections and when we'll return to school and how families will go about doing that. Next slide, please. We will use a Q&A function this evening. We hope that the majority of the questions that you might have will be answered throughout the evening. However, if we don't answer your question or if additional questions come up, we do have staff that are available and will be monitoring Q&A and answering them as best we can. We will also have some questions and answers will be provided at the end of the evening with the administrative team reading through some of the most common questions that we get. To access that, as you can see from the icon there down at the bottom of your screen, you can click on Q&A and those questions will go forward to the panelists. Next slide. As I said in the beginning, safety of our staff and students has to be our number one priority. Much of what you will hear tonight will be about our safety protocols, our safety procedures, so that we can keep people safe. We also know that there is a huge social emotional benefit to being around students and being around other people and starting to take that first step back into kind of normal life, so to speak. So we are excited to be able to open up our doors, and we're excited for the students being able to be around other people and around other students. There will be some differences, as I said, but we're excited nonetheless. And then finally, the third priority is really putting ourselves in a situation for consistent academic content, consistent access. We have to plan for potential shutdowns. We have to plan for potential cohorts that have to quarantine. And we want a model that allows our students and our teachers to continue to move forward with their academics, whether they are at home, or in the building, that we can continue to do school as best we can. Those are our three primary objectives when we think about planning for our return. Next slide, please. This is the big one, and I apologize in advance for a lot of text, but it is important that we have all of this. I can imagine many of you may be grabbing your camera right now, taking pictures so that you have this, but I want you to know that this video along with this presentation will be shared out. So if you don't take pictures or if you don't take great notes, you'll have access to all of this information afterwards. What we're really trying to decide tonight is, does your desire to have your student or students come back into hybrid instruction, or are they going to remain in CDL for the remainder of the year? Hybrid instruction will function as follows. We will divide our students into two cohorts, two groups of students. Cohort A will come into schools on Mondays and Tuesdays. Cohort B will come into school on Thursdays and Fridays. All students will log in to their classes from home on the days that they are not in the building. One point of clarification that I want to make clear, we are targeting the alpha sort of A through L for cohort A and M through Z for cohort B. But we need to look at our final numbers and split those cohorts as evenly as possible so that we're bringing in roughly the same number of students in each of those groups. So that A through L and M through Z might shift a little bit, but it shouldn't shift too much. As I said, when you're not in the building, you will log into your classes from home. All students will log into all of those classes, whether they are in the building or at home, and our Wednesday advisory will remain the same. That day will be dedicated to deep cleaning of the building to prepare for the other cohort. Advisory will still happen, but everybody will log in, and our target return date for students is the week of April 19th. That week is still to be determined what our schedule will be, but our week will start on the 19th. And in hybrid instruction, one primary change from years past is that it will be a closed campus. And what that means is once you are on campus, you are here for the remainder of the day. You cannot leave for lunch. You cannot leave if you have a release period in the middle of the day. We'll work with you for options of where you would go. But once your day starts, you are here until your day ends. The other option is CDL, Comprehensive Distance Learning. Those students will continue to log into all of their classes online from home. They will not need to change teachers. They will not need to change their classes. They will keep their exact schedule as they have it right now, but only access that class from home, their classes from home each day. The only schedules that may change in the model that we are planning to roll out, if your student is currently signed up for, from last August, signed up for 100% online, and they choose to come back in hybrid, they will need to have a schedule change because those CDL 100% online teachers will remain with those groups and not be in the building for them. So our schedules will remain the same unless you are the group that is coming from 100% online or CDL into hybrid and making that shift, and our counselors will work with students to make sure that they have an appropriate schedule. Again, lots of information, but we'll be able to answer more questions as we go through the night. Next slide, please. So here's what we want to talk a little bit about what those classes will be like. And so, you know, again, instructionally, what are you choosing for your child, or for our students in the audience, what can you expect when you come in? We will talk later tonight about the safety protocols that will be involved in each class, but from purely an instructional point of view, CDL, distance learning, will continue to drive our instruction. And if you do the math and you think about it, all of our students will experience CDL more than 50% of their time. Therefore, it will be our primary mode of instruction so that all students have access to what we're trying to accomplish as a school this year. At the beginning of every period, all teachers will check in with their entire group of students, whether they're hybrid or CDL, at the beginning of each period. From there, teachers have flexibility for what the rest of the instructional day looks like based on students' needs. But if you choose to stay in CDL, you will have direct contact and communication with your teachers in every period, every single day, just like we do now. They might continue with their exact same instructional practices. Even though they have some students in front of them and some students at home, they may log in through Google Meets, and that may be the way that they choose to deliver instruction for all students. We're getting really creative and really flexible with what that looks like, but don't expect this to be a completely new way of doing school from what we've experienced this year when it comes to instruction. And again, this is so that we have equity for students that are at home as well as in the classroom, and also so that we have consistency if cohorts need to shift or if people need to stay home. There will be some asks of students in between classes to do some wipe down of their desk and their space. It will be quick, it will be easy, but we will need many hands to help us with that to transition and plan for the next group to come in. With that, let's go one more forward, Thor, and we're going to start talking about what the schedule it looks like. And I'd like to introduce one of our associate principals, Ms. Lisa Daly.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. So just like Mr. Bailey said, beginning April 19th, the schedule for both CDL and hybrid will be just a little bit different. So everyone will start at 10 o'clock, but due to transportation, dismissal will begin at 4:05. So again, that's for everyone, regardless of the CDL or hybrid choice. For students choosing hybrid, they will arrive between 9:45 and 10 o'clock and go straight to their first period class. The building will not be open before that time for students. At 4 o'clock, students will pack up their belongings, wipe down their table, and be dismissed in waves. During this time, they could also check in asynchronously or synchronously with their teachers. After 4:20, the building will also be closed except for any students who are participating in a school-sponsored activity. Next slide, please. So we have a really great and talented group of students and teachers who put together this video that walks you through a day in the life of what it will be like to be a hybrid student here at Tigard. So go ahead and play the video, please.
Enter the bus one at a time. Entren al autobús uno a la vez. Sit in your own seat. Siéntense en su propio asiento. Leave one at a time. Salgan uno a la vez. Enter the school 6 feet apart. Entren a la escuela a 6 pies de distancia. Use hand sanitizer when you enter. Usen desinfectante de manos al entrar. Wait for the person in front to finish. Esperen a que la persona de adelante termine. Walk to classes keeping 6 feet of distance. Caminen a sus clases manteniendo una distancia de 6 pies. When entering a classroom, go right to your seat and be ready to learn. Cuando entren a su aula de clases, vayan directo a su asiento y estén listos para aprender. Lunch will be delivered to one of your classrooms for you to eat at your desks. El almuerzo será entregado a una de sus aulas de clases para comer en su escritorio. You can also bring your own lunch. Pueden traer su propio almuerzo. You may remove your masks to eat lunch. Pueden quitarse las mascarillas para almorzar. When leaving class, continue social distance. Cuando salgan de su clase, continúen el distanciamiento social. As well as when leaving the building, al igual que al salir del edificio.
Awesome. And like Miss Daly said, huge shout out and thank you to our students who put that together. That was awesome. I'd next like to invite our other associate principals, Ms. Angelita Miller and Tyler Davila, who are going to walk us through some safety protocols.
Hi, everyone. Now that we know what our day is going to look like, we're going to start to learn about some of the safety protocols that we'll have in place to keep everyone safe. So in this slide, we really want to drive home the idea that we are counting on families, students, their parents, to make sure that a safety screen or a health screen is done at home before you come to school. So you're going to be screening students, or students are going to be screening themselves because they're high school kids, for symptoms that include things like a headache, especially if it's a headache with a fever, cough or a sore throat or upset stomach, nausea, feeling weak, or a loss in the sense of taste or smell.
I think the most important thing on that slide that Ms. Miller just presented is really, if your child's not feeling well, it's okay to stay home. You know, we want to keep everybody else safe, so that's really important before they leave the house to kind of check in, make sure everybody's okay. I think when we were in school before, a lot of times kind of just try to power through, even not feeling well, and we want to avoid that. As far as masks are required at all times. When you're on the bus, on campus. If you don't have a mask, we have masks available on the bus. We also have them at the entrance of the building, along with hand sanitizer and a few other things we'll get into. If your student can't wear a mask due to a medical condition, we're just asking for a note from their healthcare provider, or that can get to our district nurse, letting us know what that reason might be.
Next slide. We'd also like to focus on some of the requirements that we have around the type of masks that are appropriate to wear to school. And this includes, any staff members and students. We'd like to see people wearing cloth masks that have 2 or more layers of fabric. It's okay to wear a gaiter if it has 2 layers of fabric. And also, of course, medical or surgical masks are fine to wear. We don't want to see scarves tied around students' faces or bandanas. And you can use a face shield with a mask, but we can't just wear face shields without a mask.
On the bus, the video did a great job of demonstrating what that will look like as we're loading and unloading, and how students will sit spaced on the bus. They're going to load the bus from the back to the front. So the first student on will go all the way to the back, and you can see the seats are marked there, so students will know exactly where to sit. Masks, again, are required at all times while you're on the bus. We're asking that students sit 1 to a seat, and each bus can hold approximately 20 students. As buses arrive, students are going to unload the bus from the front to the back one at a time. So again, the video did a great job of showing that, but just so students aren't walking past one another and giving each other plenty of space.
So this will be what it looks like when you arrive at school. We'd like to see students have their Chromebooks charged and bring them every day. So they'll need their Chromebook, and it has to be, you should plug it in overnight, make sure it's charged. Masks are required on all buses and whenever we're on campus. And another point about the masks is that we'd like to see students wearing them correctly over their nose and mouth, and with a nice fit up against their face. We're also going to have designated areas where parents are going to drop off students, and than where the buses are going to drop off students. We will have students who are driving park in our new student parking lot that's on the west side of the high school. And they can also park along 92nd, that is also on that west side of the high school. And then students are going to follow their assigned route to their first class every day. So normally students would be used to, coming in and hanging out with friends a little bit in the morning, socializing, and then when the bell rings, they would go to class. But in this hybrid situation, we're going to ask kids to come into the high school and go, sanitize and then go directly to their first period class. And then as students are arriving, we'll have administrators and security folks and our dean of students greeting kids at the door and doing a visual screening of students as they walk in, but we're not going to be taking temperatures or anything like that.
Lots of information here, but really just kind of about once students are in the classroom. Again, the video did a great job of kind of giving us a visual of what that will look like, but student desks are going to be seated 6 feet apart. And we are going to have plexiglass dividers. They look a little different than that now. We have some tri-fold, some folded dividers that'll go on desks a little nicer than that. It gives students a space to work. We also have students that are going to have individual supplies, not shared supplies, and barriers at the desk throughout the school. So part of that kind of is back to what Ms. Miller was saying about having students with Chromebooks charged and ready, just so we're not having to share chargers and things along those lines. Students will be able to move classrooms with a staggered release. We really just want to try to limit some of the bottlenecking that can go on, or making it difficult for students to pass one another in the hall. We want to make sure that stays safe. Cohort class sizes were capped to stay within the square footage guidance for each classroom. So I think it's no more than 20 kids per class maximum. So students are going to sit at their desk. They're not going to be sitting on the carpet, like couches in classrooms, bean bags, things like that. We need to have surfaces that can be wiped down. And so the hard chairs are probably best and will be in all classrooms. And then there's going to be an FAQ sheet, just those frequently asked questions that are available on the TTSD website. And it's consistently being updated with new information and questions as they come our way.
I know that lots of people are wondering about what's going to happen when students need to use the restroom. And I know that this policy is going to be a little bit different than some of our middle schools, but our students are a little older, and I think they're going to be able to easily manage this situation. So students, we're going to limit the amount of students who can be in a restroom. So it's going to be a maximum of 2 students at a time, and there'll be 2 stalls that are available, and there'll be empty stalls in between. And then also, as students are waiting to use a restroom, we'll have the 6-foot safety guidelines posted on the floor so that 2 people can be waiting to use the restroom at any time. And then we are kind of going to divide our high school into zones, and there are bathrooms in the different zones in our high school that we're going to show students to use those bathrooms. So just to give an example, if a student is in a world language class, they would use the bathroom that is closest to world language, and they wouldn't walk across the school all the way over to where, the main office bathrooms are, or the commons bathrooms. So, and we'll be showing students, we'll be making sure that students know where the bathrooms are, and how they're supposed to use them.
So traffic flow, really we're talking about using some directional arrows to just stay to the right is kind of going to be that main thing. Our hallways are wide enough that we can have single file lines evenly spaced, and students can flow on the right, moving from class to class as they need to. They are going to be directed to enter at specific entrances. We're going to want to limit that and be able to have eyes on those. And then also have plenty of sanitizer and things like that available for students. We do have a couple of places where we're going to have it just be a one-way traffic flow. The hallways are too narrow, or the like primarily stairwell areas that are only maybe 3 to 4 feet wide and not enough room to get 2 lines of kids passing one another safely. So we've got some plans for that, and we'll be marking all of those areas as far as flow is concerned. Like I said earlier, in our larger hallways, we have plenty of room to have 2-way traffic flow, and we have stanchions available, and then lots of markers on the floor and things like that, and plenty of adults out making sure that kids are able to get where they need to go and understand how those traffic patterns are going to work. Like I mentioned earlier, students are going to be asked to stay to the right in the hallways, and plenty of signage for that. One of the main things is we want to reiterate that it's not going to be like it was before, when kids kind of came in the morning and plenty of time to meet up with friends in the hallways and visit. Again, we don't want to ruin the fun, and at the same time, we want everyone to stay safe and maintain their distance. So, yeah, just want to touch on that point one more time.
Okay, so lunch. This is another one of those big questions that a lot of people have. You can see in that small box what the lunch schedule is, and I'll just point out that in each of those colored areas, there is a slightly lighter color of additional time that has been added to account for staff transitioning and for the cleaning of the spaces after the meal periods. So almost all of our students will remain in their second period classrooms for lunch. Due to the current guidance from the state, we cannot meet the needs of all of our students by serving them lunch in our commons areas. As large as it is, the only place where we can safely do that is in the classroom. We will have supervision staff that will deliver lunches to the classroom areas and monitor those students during lunch, so that teachers can go, if they choose to, go eat lunch somewhere else and have their break during the day. We will all help, students and staff will help keep the classroom safe. We'll clean up at the end of lunch so that we'll get a disinfectant, and it'll be sprayed down on the surfaces in that area. And teachers will return at the end to monitor that cleanup and get kids prepared for either the beginning of their second period, as you can see in the purple boxes, or for transitioning to their third period class if they have second lunch. Next slide, please.
At the end of the day, we talked about this a little bit as well, but we're going to have students dismiss in waves, depending on where they're at in the school, to maintain social distancing, and allow us to have students load buses and exit the building in an orderly fashion. Students who ride the bus or drive will be dismissed in one direction, and all students that are being picked up or walk will be dismissed in another part of the school. The north exterior walkways can be used as a place to wait, and for the parents as they're coming to pick up. Students must also maintain social distancing even when they're out on the sidewalks as they wait. And the dismissal by cohorts, we don't have that finalized yet. We want to be thoughtful about that as far as sports practices, when buses arrive, making it convenient for parents. Really just trying to kind of time that and have a solid plan around being thoughtful about how we let kids leave the building in an orderly way.
So this is a visual. One of the most common questions that we get is if there is a positive case and a confirmed positive case, who would have to be quarantined and for how long? And this is a brief but visual explanation. If student A were a confirmed positive case of COVID, then anybody determined to have close contact with student A would need to quarantine for 10 days. So student B, the yellow student, might be a student that is in one of their classes, might be a student that rides the bus with them. In our contact tracing modules in Synergy, we will be able to determine who are those close contacts, and those close contacts would also be asked to quarantine for 10 days. Student C would not have to quarantine. They had close contact with student B. Maybe they're in a different class with them or on a sports team or what have you, but they did not have direct contact with student A. They would not have to quarantine. So that quarantine protocol essentially goes one level of contact, not two levels. So students within close contact would be asked to quarantine, and the second layer would not. They'd be able to continue with school.
Okay, so I know this is a lot of information, but we're getting to the point where we will walk you through, or I will walk you through how to make your selection online. So just a couple of things to remember. So whatever option you choose, that online, if you choose the 100% online option, that is a commitment for the entire year. If you choose this option, your schedule will not change. The schedules that will change, which I've seen come up in the chat a couple of times, is if you are, if you've already selected the CDL model, so comprehensive distance learning back in August, and are choosing to change to hybrid. That's when you'll see a schedule change and teacher change. But if you're choosing to remain online and just kind of keep things as it is, you will not see a schedule change. So let's go ahead and walk through your decision here. Next slide, please. Thank you. All right, so the survey opens tonight and it'll be available in Parent View until March 29th. Everyone must select an option regardless of whether or not you're changing what you selected in the fall. Next slide, please. So this slide again is just reiterating that we need everyone to select either hybrid or 100% online. The system will not default to your previous choice. Once you're in Parent View, you'll select your choice and choose a transportation and a meal option. Next slide, please. So once you log into Parent View, you'll select your choice by first choosing 2020, 2021 hybrid or 100% online, and then click Begin New Registration. Next slide, please. From there, you'll answer a series of questions, again, regarding transportation and meals. Click Save, Continue, and then you'll submit your choice.
Okay, again, as we have said, there are a lot of information in here, likely a presentation that you may want to go back and watch again. And as I mentioned in the beginning, we will also post this presentation on our website and email it out so that if you just want to go through the slides, you can do that without listening to us jabber on and on. That said, there have also been some really great questions that have been posed in the Q&A. And so my administrative team and I we've been answering them diligently as best we can as the night has gone on, but we want to read some of those questions into the space for those of you that may be wondering the same thing, or for those of you that are listening to this on YouTube right now and can't ask the questions. We'll read a few of those into the space and answer them as we can. So I will start. One of the common questions has come specifically about freshmen, and will there be an opportunity for them to get an orientation if they choose to come back in hybrid? And the answer is absolutely yes. That first week, that we are back April 19th. We are planning to have some special schedules that week that will allow small groups to come in before classes start, maybe start our classes a little bit later that day, have a modified schedule so that we will have groups of students that will get an orientation, they will get some training around the protocols, and then we'll have our first day of class after that. And we'll do that each of the 4 days that students are into the building. A follow-up question to that was, if for our freshmen that are choosing to stay in CDL, will they have the opportunity for an orientation next year as sophomores? And yes, we are already starting to plan for what the fall will look like. And the truth of the matter is, this is super important for our freshmen, but it's equally important for a lot of our other students with all of the construction and new spaces in our building. None of our students have seen the entirety of the building. And so this sort of orientation and tour and planning is going to be important for all students that return this year, as well as those that wait and come back into the building next year.
Brian, there are a couple of questions about release periods. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, one of the questions that I saw was, if my son or daughter has a first period release, do they need to be there before second period starts? And the answer is no. If you have a release period at the beginning or the end of the day, that is the beginning or end of your day. If you use the school bus for transportation and that drops you off at 9:45 and you have a first period release, we will find a place for you during that period. But if you get yourself to school and you don't start until second, then you don't have to be here until second period starts. If you have a release in the middle of the day, we will find a place for you in this building. You can either pick a class that's available based on space if you would like to take a class instead, or you can use that time as a study hall, and we'll have an assigned location for you that is supervised for you to use that as a study hall until your next period starts.
Ryan, a couple of questions that are coming up in the chat are around their selection at this point in time, and if that's going to have an impact on what classes they have, what teachers they have, if that's going to change at all.
Yeah, it's very common and very confusing because each of the 3 levels in TTSD has handled this a little bit different based on their needs. So our plan right now is that if you are currently in hybrid and you want to stay in hybrid, you will keep the same teachers, same schedule. If you are currently in hybrid and you want to go into CDL and stay and do your school from home the rest of the year, your teachers and your schedule will remain the same. If you are currently in CDL and you opted for 100% online in the fall and you now want to change and come into hybrid, you will have to have a schedule change because those teachers will continue teaching CDL only, and we want to get you in with a hybrid teacher. That is the only group of students at the high school level that will have a schedule change. Several other questions that I saw come up there were again about next fall, and we just want to be clear that the schedule that we are using right now, the timing of transportation, the 10 to 4 for classes, all of that is just through this year. No decisions have been made about the schedule for next year. We are building as we've been forecasting over the last week or so, and thank you guys for doing that. We are going to build 2 schedules for next year because we don't know what the fall is going to look like, but everything that you see in front of you tonight, as far as our schedule, is just for the end of this year. And as we know more information about the fall, we will make and communicate those decisions. Admin team, what are some others that have come up?
Had a few questions about parking and parking passes.
Yes, thank you. Our hope is that all students who drive will be able to park on campus. We won't know for sure until we get our survey numbers back from Parent View. But our hope is that any student who wants to can park on campus. and either on campus or on 92nd, like Ms. Miller had said in her slide. We will not be charging for parking passes this year. The parking will likely become first come, first serve that's in there, but we are anticipating, based on the additional spaces that have been added to our lot, that we will have plenty of room for students who are able to drive and choosing to come into hybrid to park on campus free of charge this year.
Brian, some parents are wondering if they start in hybrid and it doesn't work out, would they be able to go to CDL?
So what I can tell you is if you start in CDL and want to come to hybrid, that will be a hard no. We need to, if you choose CDL from the beginning, you're going to stay in CDL through the end of the year because we won't be able to make schedule changes that I mentioned a few minutes ago. If you choose hybrid and for whatever reason you want to change to CDL after the fact, that one we don't really know at this point. Our hope is that we can make these selections and have them stick for the rest of the year because that helps us plan our cohorts. That helps us plan the alpha split for who's coming in on what days and who's not. And just for consistency's sake, we want that to be as consistent as possible. The truth of the matter is, if you do come in and it's not working, we are open to having that conversation after the fact. First, we would want to identify what's not working to see if we can help with that and problem solve it, because there are some benefits to coming into the building. But ultimately, we want to make sure that our students have every opportunity to be successful and that they feel safe in the school. And so if those become issues, we'll absolutely have those conversations with you.
Another parent is wondering how gym classes will work.
So our plan for gym classes, based on our fourth quarter schedule, is that we, with our additional space that have been added through construction, we actually have 4 spaces that we can use indoors for our gym classes, between the weight room, the auxiliary gym, a brand new fitness room that just finished this summer, and our original main gym. We're also hopeful that with this starting in the middle of April, that much of our time can be spent outside in our beautiful fields, and that we're going to be able to spread out, be safe. There will be cleaning protocols that happen in between the use of equipment, but we're excited to bring students in and start increasing our activity, get students moving. We are waiting on additional guidelines on locker rooms, and so that is a topic that we are discussing. I mean, even just at 4 o'clock this afternoon, trying to figure out if students are going to be able to dress down or not. What will that look like? The protocols and such will all be coming out as soon as we have answers. But our plan will be to do physical activity during those PE classes in safe, socially distanced ways.
Okay, Brian. And then the same question, only with the performing arts. So for music class, band, choir, performing arts.
Yes, and this we actually just got updated guidance on Monday or Tuesday. The days are running together, but Monday or Tuesday of this week, we did receive updated guidance. That also came up in the chat a few times. They will be able to use their instruments. Choir classes will be able to sing. They have some distancing protocols, some mask wearing protocols at various times, but we will be able to engage in our performing arts if you are in the building. So again, I don't know all the specifics, it just came out, but they did give us some guidelines. We can play music, we can sing, we just have to follow some distancing guidelines and the such. If a cohort is too large to meet those, then we will get creative with where those spaces are in the building, and they might be assigned a different location. But again, similar to the PE, we are excited to get kids, our performing artists, in and sing and make music and play instruments, take that step towards normalcy that we've all been hoping for.
What about clubs? Will clubs be offered for students who are online?
So many of our clubs that have been operating this year have been doing so in a virtual format. We are starting to have conversations about bringing clubs into the building for on-site opportunities. But again, through the lens of equity, we want to make sure that all students have access to that. So they will likely maintain a virtual means of connection as well as some potential in-person means of connection, likely after school, because of the way the schedule is built. So we are working on that right now, have been in communication with a group of student advocates that are pushing for some of these clubs and activities to begin. And so we're hopeful to be able to do that as some after school stuff in person as well as virtually. What other questions are out there from the admin team? I see a few that are unanswered yet in the chat. Have we nailed all of those?
Brian, can you speak a little bit to just the staff and their feeling on getting students back in the building?
Yeah, great question. Our staff, like all of us in this pandemic, we have various emotions that are attached to interacting with other people and what is that going to look like. Our teachers are wanting to make sure that they put their best foot forward instructionally. So they're really working hard right now to try to figure out how am I going to do both the students in person while having some students at home. So there's some stress involved with that, but I can tell you that every single one of us is excited to see students again. That's why we got into this business. None of us got into this business to sit behind a screen. And so just the idea of having students in our classrooms on our campus again, every single one of us is excited to welcome students back.
So should students and families expect the instruction to be the same regardless of hybrid or online?
Correct. Yep, we want to make sure that our students are given the same opportunities, have the same expectations and the same academic outcomes, whether they are at home or in person. Obviously, there might be a few differences here and there about what we can or cannot do in the classroom versus at home, but essentially we want this to be as equitable and as even as possible for all of our students, regardless of the choice that their family makes.
Brian, someone's asking if we couldn't just bring cohorts socially distanced onto the football field for graduation.
Yeah, for our seniors that are in the meeting tonight or listening online, we've got a team of teachers and staff that have been working hard now for a couple of months to plan graduation. And what we know at this point is that the current metrics would not allow us to have more than 150 people on the field and 150 people into the grandstands. If we continue our trend with our metrics, those numbers could increase as high as 300 on the field and 300 in the stands, neither of which are enough to meet the needs of our graduating class, which is about 440 students. So we are hopeful that there might be some possibilities for some small groups to come in for some small group celebrations as we get towards the end of the year. But based on the metrics that we have right now, we are planning some other creative ways for socially distanced graduation ceremonies, likely to be similar to what we did last year with a drive-through model. Although the exciting difference for this year is that now with our construction done, we can actually host that event on site and Tigard High School can graduate at Tigard High School. All of that to say, as of right now on March 17th, it's probably too early to know for sure what the metrics will be in June, but we are planning as much as we can in advance so that whatever options are available to us, we can react and adjust as necessary and honor all of our seniors, all of their families, and make it a true, genuine celebration of 13 years of hard work to reach this milestone in their life.
And just to add to that, because you haven't experienced it yet, and we did have a class that went through and experienced it last year, they thought it was a lot of fun. And so did parents. Some parents said that they've never had so much fun at a graduation.
Yeah, what was really cool about it is graduation really is a family event. We are honoring the senior class for all of their hard work, but we're also recognizing the families who have supported them for 13 years of education, who want to see their child walk across the stage and receive that. Thor, I think we had a little switch over. So anyway, what was special about last year was that the families got to be front and center with their child as they receive their diploma and celebrate with them in a very, very personal and very, very heartwarming way. It was the highlight of last year for me, for sure. Okay, more questions. We got a little bit more time. We have a few more minutes. Let's see if we can get a couple of the other questions that are out there. I see a couple of questions in there about other levels in the district. And I would just really encourage you, if you have children at the other levels and you haven't heard what the plan is at the middle level or the elementary level, please reach out to your child's school and ask them for the specifics. I would hate to lead you wrong by giving you some of the wrong answers. I see a question in there about the cohorts and if my child needs to be in one cohort or the other. I'll be very honest with you, that's going to be tight. We are going to stick to the alphabet sort for our cohorts as often as possible for logistical planning. However, one example of where we might change would be if we have siblings or residents or people that live in the same house with different last names, we will identify a single cohort for that family to attend in so that they are coming to school on the same days. And if there are extenuating circumstances, we'll encourage you to reach out to your counselor to have that conversation. If we can do it safely, we will explore the options, but I can make no guarantees that we'll be able to adjust those cohorts until we have a better idea of the numbers, those sizes, and making sure that we can meet our safety metrics. I see a question about being dropped off early. Students cannot come into the building and preferably not on campus until 9:45. We will have our building staffed and supervise our socially distanced requirements beginning at 9:45, but we cannot gather on campus. We cannot gather in our commons areas. We cannot hang out prior to, A, because we don't have the supervision, and B, because we need to maintain socially distancing. So our students that are choosing to come into hybrid need to arrive between 9:45 and 10 o'clock.
Brian, does anything change for full IB students?
There are no changes for full IB students relative to the schedule. All of our IB classes, when we built the schedule between hosting them first semester or second semester, were determined by the IB testing calendar. I can tell you that all IB tests have been canceled this year. We are essentially wrapping up, and now I forget the date, Lisa, but wrapping up our internal assessments for IB, which will be the primary mode in which their IB scores are determined. But there will be no IB testing this year, so that will not change or have an impact.
And if a parent needs their child to be in a different cohort, who should they contact?
That would be, yeah, what I just said a few moments ago. We'd reach out to the counselor, but we're really asking people to stay with their cohorts as often as possible so that we can adequately plan for cohort size and meeting our safety metrics. I did see another question in here about the coming weeks and the schedules leading up to the 19th. And my mind is a bit foggy. I apologize, but I can't remember if we spoke specifically about the week of April 12th. That will be the week where we are providing our teachers with training, and they're going to be putting their classrooms together, and they're going to be going over their safety protocols. We'll be getting all of our safety apparatuses installed in the classrooms. So we'll have way more information about this that will come home to families in the coming weeks. But if you are either CDL or hybrid, the last day of new instruction for Q3 will be April 9th. April 12th and 13th are Monday and Tuesday. Teachers will have available office hours for students to check in, get questions answered, turn in late assignments, whatever it may be. They might have a couple of assessments or some assignments asynchronously during those times, but they will not have assigned class times on the 12th or the 13th as we wrap up Q3. And then the 15th and 16th of that week, Thursday and Friday, will be non-school days for students. That will be our big formal trainings and safety protocols for teachers as they get ready for welcoming those smiling faces back into the building on April 19th. So again, more information to come on that schedule the week of April 12th, but just know that there will be some changes in their class schedules for that week. Going through some more questions here to make sure we try to get them all. Question about the bus. They will be assigned a bus. Students will not get to choose to ride which bus they ride. They will be assigned a bus route. Generally speaking, those bus routes will remain very close to what they have been in the past. Some of our larger routes that typically have 30 or more students, those will be split into multiple routes. Because we have a maximum of 20 or so per bus. So there will be some slight differences, but they will be very similar to the bus routes that they've had in the past. And they will be assigned to you based on your choice and preference that is included in the survey that hopefully you all are able to get into and take in the next couple of days. As Lisa had said earlier, we will ask you about your choice for hybrid or CDL. We will also ask you about your preferred transportation mode, as well as whether or not you are interested in receiving school lunch, school breakfast, or both. Just to reiterate, if you do choose school breakfast or lunch, those are free of charge for all families. We will not be charging for any meals this year if you choose to have your lunch brought up to your classroom from food services. I see a question in there about carpooling and can kids carpool? The short answer is yes. The long answer is if this is something that you are going to do, please be safe. Please wear your mask. Please roll the windows down as best you can. Try to do this as safely as possible. But you can absolutely carpool if you choose to do so. We just ask that we all continue to take the same sort of safety precautions that we are at home and in the community when we're outside of our school time, so that we don't see a spike in numbers, so that we don't see positive cases and have to shut cohorts down for a while and send them home. So we're going to ask our community to continue to be vigilant when it comes to wearing the mask outside of school, to socially distancing, to controlling our personal bubbles for who we're interacting with. But absolutely, if that in your family deems that to be the safest way for your child to get to school, then absolutely do it. Just take whatever precautions are necessary to keep this spread as low as we are right now. Another question about parking passes, and just to reiterate, if your son or daughter is able to drive, our hope is that we are not going to charge for those passes this year, and our hope is that every student who wants to drive will be able to find a parking spot either in the student lot, which is new and beautiful, or along 92nd, which stretches all the way down to the end of the softball field. So there will be a lot of student parking available on campus this year, and our hope is that everybody who wants to can park on campus free of charge. If you are having troubles in parent view with logging in and finding the survey, please reach out to the counseling department. We also have some videos that we will try to get posted and sent home with more detailed instructions than what we had tonight. But definitely, if you are struggling, if you call the counseling office, they're experts and they can walk you through that. It's also important, I'll add to that, that if you have a son or daughter that has already completed the survey for middle level or for elementary, we still need to go back in and complete it again for your high school age student. Everybody needs to fill that out. We will not just roll over previous decisions or decisions that were made for other siblings.
Brian, I've got a question. Mom is wondering what happens if my student goes to school and gets super excited about seeing a friend who they haven't seen in a long time and goes to hug them.
There will be lots and lots of reminders. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and so they're wondering, are there going to be lots of signs that say you need to follow these protocols?
Yes. Yes, and we all know high schoolers and how socially motivated they are. There will be lots of signs, lots of reminders, and lots of adult supervision to give them gentle reminders of our protocols. But they are going to be excited to see one another. And so we're hoping to have minimal numbers of those reminders, but we also know our kids. We know and love them, and we know that we're going to need to give them a lot of reminders. I've only seen a couple of questions in there about masks, but I do want to take a moment and speak a little bit more about those. Ms. Miller and Mr. Davila did a great job of explaining the district protocols, but I have one piece of advice that I'd like to throw out there, in that is a long time to wear masks during the day if we're not used to it. And so I really encourage those of you that are choosing hybrid model, kids in the room, I know you're not going to want to hear this, but I need you to start wearing your mask often and regular, even if it's just around the house. Getting used to wearing that mask for extended periods of time. Students that I've talked to in other schools that have already started to come back in other areas of the state or in other states all say that after a couple of days they get used to it and it's not that big of a deal. But give yourself an opportunity to get used to it before you come back on the 19th, so that doesn't seem like as big of a shock for you, so that you're used to it. Really encourage folks to start wearing those as often as possible, even if they're by themselves, just to get used to it. Question in there about the graduation plans for 2021 and whether students and parents will be able to give input on that, and absolutely. So what we are actually in the process of building out a presentation of sorts for our senior parents and students of what the plans could look like, what some of the restrictions are and why, and what some of our accommodations to work within those are. And then we will send that out to students and parents for feedback coming soon, I hope. Like I said, we've started the presentation. We want to finalize that, and then we'll get it out to everybody for feedback very soon. If a student needs an accommodation and cannot wear a mask, how will that be handled for the other kids in the school in their cohort? And so those are delicate conversations that will be handled with care. If you do have a student, and Ms. Miller or Mr. Davila spoke to this earlier, if you do have a child that needs an accommodation for wearing a mask, we need a medical note from a care provider as to why. And then you can contact either our school nurse or your counselor, and we will work through that process and work with you about how we have that conversation, perhaps within your classes or with some of our supervisory adults, so that they know, and so on and so forth. So we'll work with families around what those communications look like and what you're comfortable with us saying or not saying to support them if those accommodations are needed.
So another parent was wondering if we would be having any social gatherings, and one of the examples was prom. So we're not going to hold a prom this year, but students will be able to meet as clubs and as affinity groups and as, I don't know, not necessarily just social groups, but if they belong to a club, there will be times when they can meet.
I think we have gotten through most of the big ones. Again, we want to thank everybody for coming out tonight, for being a part of this, for adding in those questions and helping us take some time to clarify what the expectations will be. Please reach out to counselors or to us administrators if you have further questions before making your decision. And then continue to look for more updates and more information. Those of you that you guys all know this, we've been following along. We get updates regularly. A lot of what we're planning for right now is based on the information that we know right now, and that could change. And as it changes, we adjust. And as we adjust, we communicate as best we can with everybody. So please keep checking your emails, follow along for updates. A lot of information is coming your way. I know that you can be inundated sometimes, but we're doing our best to keep you in the loop as the information changes for us. And we're excited to open this up for our students coming up on the 19th. And we're also excited to continue everything that we're doing to support our students who are staying home. One way or another, as a Tigard family, we're going to get through this and we're going to be okay. And we're all going to do our best. But the over 200 participants tonight that were able to come in and watch this, we thank you. For those of you that were watching online on YouTube, we thank you. I appreciate you guys coming out and getting the questions. And with that, we'll sign off and hope that everybody has a good night.
Hey, Brian, one last thing. If a parent does not have, or they don't remember their username or their password, who should they reach out to make sure that they've got that and are able to get their selection made?
Your best two sources are going to come in the counseling office. So if you reach out to Lynette Bigelow or Donna Kirkring in the counseling office, both of them can help you very easily get that parent view information. Good question. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night. Let us know if you have more questions, and we will see everybody soon. Thank you.